everybody. We are live for the JC podcast. This is the penalty game podcast. The whole month of January, or June, I should say, is designated for the penalty game. I'm going to throw in some comedians and some actors and some other folks, but the majority of this program is going to be all about sports and sports stuff in and around sports. There's Jack right there. Let me let him in. Okay, Jack is coming on board, and then I'm sure Corey is soon to follow.
Hey, boss.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
I'm good, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, you as well. We are finally connected again.
Hey, yeah. I don't see myself on this thing. Can you see me?
I only see your name. You got to turn your camera on. I don't have control. There you are.
I already clicked it.
Okay, there you go. Got to click it again, I guess.
Okay.
So, what's happening, my brother?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I just got back from Seattle. I was in Seattle for over a week, and I'm sorry I missed the show last week.
Yeah.
I actually was under the impression we were going to get started doing it regularly in a few weeks.
Well, we were, but I had a brain fart and I forgot to go ahead and set it all up. And I was thinking we were going to start the 1st of June was my original thought, but then at the last minute I said let's get it going, and I forgot I said that. So I'm
okay. All right.
Not your fault, my fault, my bad.
No, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I'm.
Yeah, so much.
So what's our topic today?
Oh my God, where do we start?
I got to tell you, are we rolling right now?
Yes, we are. We're live.
Okay.
Not only are we rolling, but we're live at the same time.
Well, let me tell you something. A couple of years ago, I left out of a cruise in San Francisco, and I've always considered San Francisco to be the Paris of America. And my wife and I, we were shocked at how absolutely trashed that city had become. Just filthy, just outright filthy. So we go up to Seattle. We always wanted to go to Seattle, and Seattle is like a photo finish right behind San Francisco. They have let that city go to hell. I mean, it's just filthy. I'm shocked, and the homeless problem is something they're not addressing, but there are more homeless people walking the street than people going to work, to and from work.
Really?
There's 10 cities all through downtown. It doesn't feel safe to walk along the waterfront. So,
you think the pandemic had something to do with that?
Yeah, I think the numbers they haven't done anything to isolate the homeless people. They're just letting them wander around the streets, and they're not doing anything. So most of the people are probably in their house, which explains if I walk down the street and there was 25 or 30 people on a block, then I would say 20 of them are homeless people. Now, Corey Ramsey just texted. He wants to know if he's coming in on that thing. You want to?
Yeah, you got to send him. You got to send him the link. Can you do that? Because I don't.
Right, we'll do that. Hang on one sec, my man. Hang on. Let's see here. All right. There it is. Look at me getting all technological.
Wow, check you out.
Yep.
You're getting all techie on us.
Okay. Sorry about that. There we go. I'm in. All right. So I got to tell you what happened. So I dropped off some clients out in Palm Desert. On the way back, we stop in Temecula. I'm exhausted. I've been on the road for 15, 16 hours since Redding, California. We stopped in Temecula for a bite to eat. Had no idea we had walked into the hornet's nest. We ordered a couple of burgers, and You know how like when you're at a ball game, it's like, let's go Jeter, pump, 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 pump.
Right.
And then other people join in. Oh no.
Right.
We're sitting there eating, and about 100 and maybe 110, 120 people begin chanting in unison, Black Lives Matter. I mean, it was just one big surge of sound all at once, like it was timed and orchestrated.
Out of nowhere.
They had obviously, this had probably was very planned, and they were stopping at each patio and restaurant and getting in the faces of white people and hoping to instigate some reaction from people having a beer or something. But it was just a group of black people trying to cause a riot. And they were wearing masks that had George Floyd's face on it. And they were clearly just trying to start trouble. So we get in the Mercedes and we wiggle out of downtown, Old Town Temecula, and we go along that side street kind of off the main drag. We literally were a half a block in front of sheriffs and Temecula police who came roaring in, sirens blasting, and they were going to put a stop to this because they were blocking all of the road and the sidewalk. And so we drive a couple hours to La Mesa, and we walk right into Hell's Kitchen in La Mesa as they're burning down buildings and rolling over cars and looting businesses, and all hell is breaking loose in La Mesa. They burned down 2 banks, a Chase Bank and a Union Bank. So Saturday was a frightening. And now here's the kicker. I drive a retired police car when I go to work, and I had to drive my car out of La Mesa with my wife in the car.
So you look like an undercover cop, if nothing else.
Well, and they're angry at the cops on Saturday. They're angry. So we get on 8, and 8 East is blocked completely. They've shut it down because of protesters. And we get on 8 West and head back to the water, and we're literally doing 100. Like, I didn't care about being pulled over. I just wanted to get my wife home. And I was really concerned about another blockage on the road, and that the freeway might be closed or about to be closed. I mean, to me, I just got off the phone with my cousin, who's like a brother to me, and he said it's absolute insanity in New York. He said the looting and the fighting and the rioting, the beating up business owners that are simply trying to protect their business. I think, like, we've entered a time where sheer insanity seems to have kind of taken over.
No, it's sanity, because it's all cause and effect and a reaction to an action. It's not like insanity would be if there were no police brutality. That was the barometer, the fever of America.
You're on the money there, because
it's the fever of America is police brutality.
3 incidents in less than a month.
Yeah, and here's the thing.
Here's the thing. Georgia.
It is normal. It is normal and sane when all members of a society sign on to an agreement. The agreement is an unspoken agreement. That unspoken agreement is, I'll be cool if you be cool. It's not in writing. It's not on paper. It is not in the Constitution. It's just human beings that recognize that we're living together, and we're going to create a societal principle, an unwritten society principle. And that principle is, rich or poor, if you cool, I'm cool. And what happens is, if the rich and the powerful and the police and the authority that are all supposed to be a part of the same principle as the homeless and the black and the poor, we all sign an agreement that we're all going to be cool, and we're all going to follow this unspoken rule of just living together in a society and not causing any disruption, because we're not trying to hurt you. You're not trying to hurt us. We may not be making as much money as you. We may not have as much privilege, but there is a societal agreement that we can live and function together, and we're okay with that. But the second that somebody infringes on that society principle, then it is normal for the other side to react, and not only react, but
push back.
but overreact. And here's the thing: don't forget the element of professional anarchist that doesn't give a shit about the rich and the white or the poor and the black. They just want to bring down our society. They want to bring down our government. They want to bring down our institutions. They want America to be a free-for-all with no principles, no laws, no rules, no constitutions, no anything. Just every man for himself and the survival of the fittest. They feather in to the demonstrators, and they're the ones, the paid professional anarchists that are financed by people who have a lot of money that want to disrupt the American dream. They want to disrupt the American Constitution. They want to disrupt American capitalism. They don't give a shit about any of it. And they're
I'll tell you what, it's interesting you say that, because just this morning I posted on my Facebook page, because it occurred to me, what if Trump is a mole for Russia to literally break down our system? What if he's a plant?
Well, first of all, you don't even have to say it to know that there's a element of that exists, because when studies were done about Russian interfering with our election, okay, it's irrelevant if Trump benefits or not. There was a movement by Russia to disrupt our country. Now, what better way to do that than to have 1,000 Russian internet social media operatives pinpointing different micro cultures in America and then antagonizing them with whatever. And they're doing it on both sides, because the goal is to divide and at the same time to dilute the authority of our institutions and to dilute.
And I completely agree with you.
And
because
so
I haven't heard from this administration in 3.5 years. I haven't heard, hey, let's work together. Let's have some unity. Let's combine as a nation. Let's utilize everything. Even though we have different views, let's work together. I haven't heard that once.
Well, that works against the.
And you gotta let Corey in. He's waiting to be let in.
I thought I did. I hit the button, but it didn't happen. Okay. There it is.
But I completely agree with you. And when you said it's not in the Constitution, it's not in the Bill of Rights, I disagree with you, because there's a little thing called all men are created equal that is absolutely written down as one of our foundations in America.
Yeah.
All men, no matter what their religion, no matter what their wealth, no matter what their status, all men in America are created equal.
Yeah, well, you can still have that, but they still don't have to sign on to the principle of
you have to honor it.
Of honoring it, and the thing is, if you don't honor it, then this is what you get, and it's not insanity. If it's not insanity, if it's like we're all in the same canoe, and you can't go, oh, the black people who are burning businesses are the ones that punching a hole in the canoe on that side of the canoe when we're all in the same canoe. You can't.
Well, Here's the thing that
you can't look at it like that. You can't look at it like that.
Be very interesting about this La Mesa thing. I don't know if you're familiar with where La Mesa is in San Diego, but it's kind of in the eastern part of the county. It's considered East County. It's the very beginning of East County in San Diego. But apparently, from all the footage and everything that's been gathered and all the investigating that's begun, it seems like a great deal of these looters came from neighboring Spring Valley, which is a very economically challenged neighborhood. And they simply went a mile up the road and decided to F up La Mesa. And La Mesa had all these residents of Spring Valley show up, blow the place apart, destroy, loot, and go home back to their neighborhood. And the residents of La Mesa grabbed buckets, paintbrushes, ladders, and they began sweeping up and cleaning up the mess that was left by these rioters that came from mostly Spring Valley, which I think is cowardice. Go screw up your own neighborhood if you want to do that. Go screw up
No,
where you go shopping.
You're missing the point. You're missing the point. Those people come from as far as Arizona, California, Las Vegas. There is
Yeah.
a organized
Yes.
professional, Jack. There is a professional organized paid to pile in a van and go and cause anarchy with uh, with a peaceful protest. Pick a peaceful. Let me put it to you this way: pick a protest. It doesn't matter what the protest is. These people will organize. They get paid. They come and they're going to burn and loot. It could be a protest for putting kittens in a blender.
You're exactly
and
right.
and they'd be like,
This is
okay,
this is like their job.
it's a PETA protest. It's on. All the PETA people and the animal lovers and especially the cat lovers. They won't start marching with the signs. They're gonna have the cat pussy hats on, and it's gonna be like injustice
Right.
to cats.
Right.
And they're gonna load up in the vans. And they're going to come out because they're paid to do so, and they're going to feather in behind, and they're going to create havoc. And meanwhile, the people in the front who's really concerned about cats is like behind them, like, what the hell's going on? Who's setting the fires? Like this, we're not trying to.
You're exactly right.
That's my store. Like that's
You're
my
exactly
store.
Right. Yes.
Like the people
exactly
who come
right.
out, they come out from their own neighborhoods. They're not trying to burn and loot their own stores. Now, as the more affluent the neighborhood is, anybody who's burning and looting is definitely going to be not from the neighborhood. And as the status of economic status goes down to the very, very poor, even the very, very poor aren't going to burn and loot their own stores until the stores are busted and burned. And because they are ass out anyway, then they turn into an opportunist because
and that's the word I used this morning.
Because they're so poor and they're so desperate and they're so ass out. Why not? But it's not like that's the goal. The goal is the anarchists come in and it only takes one or two. They only need a handful to basically bring the whole thing down, and they're organized and they can go anywhere there's a group. They're organized, they can go anywhere and they can make that happen, bro. And that's
you remember a movie in the 70s called The Warriors?
Yes, I do. I love that movie. I met the guy who the Warriors come out and play.
Of that movie, right? But the premise of that movie is this guy Cyrus decides he's a leader of one of these gangs in New York, and he starts to discover there's about 100,000 members of gangs and only 20,000 cops. We can run this city. They're not running anything. And his plan is to simply take New York, and he starts to organize everybody, and they're simply gonna overwhelm the police. That's the plan. But obviously,
So, Stephen, I want to bolster your point a bit there, because you're right about the waters get muddied up because the media will only report on, the rioting and the looting.
Yeah, that's the most sensational. The more fear, the more chaos.
Yes, wherein most of the people now, I actually watched some of the demonstrators last night, as a matter of fact, after my run around Balboa Park, and it was completely peaceful. The police officers were there with their motorcycles riding around. I even heard some individuals say, "Watch out, there are some cars, move out of the way." Everybody was peaceful. And I'll tell you something that I look for that I didn't see. I didn't see one news media camera there, because that's where it was peaceful.
Yeah, no,
there was no rioting or looting. And it's sort of like, if you have an experience at a bar like when we were young, what do you remember generally? The loudmouth in the bar, or maybe everybody else is calm, but you remember the one or two loudmouth.
Yeah,
and I think
stand
that's
out.
what we have going on.
That's
correct.
That's
what we have going on here, and I think it's important because the message is getting lost. The message for change is getting lost because people are focusing on, oh, they're violent. See, they're not really interested in change. They're only interested in, taking and smashing businesses.
But that's a spin, and that's a spin to avoid the real issue. Like that's
Exactly.
also part. There's another paid professional organized team of people who are just part of the propaganda of diluting the message and glorifying and sensationalizing the wrong message, the reaction, and that becomes the thing. And the unsophisticated, the unorganized, the unevolved in issues take the bait and fall for it. Everybody else is like, wait, 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 wait. We still need to focus on where the atom is split because that's the problem. You can't focus on the chain reaction of the atom that's split, and then that's the issue because the chain reaction wouldn't have happened if you hadn't split the atom. That's just physics. You got to focus on, the splitting of the atom and where you split it. Because you split it in the middle of nowhere, there's no collateral damage. Who cares about the react? There is no.
Well, we live in a society of headlines, and I'm guilty of it too. Sometimes I see a headline and I think, okay, that seems to tell the story. But if you actually do your homework, if you go to Snopes, if you look into some of this, you find out what you're reading is completely fake news. You know what I mean? The media is purposely misleading the consumer, and we can't really trust. We can't really trust what we see on our news broadcasts anymore. Because the stuff they're fabricating is certainly getting the ratings because people would rather watch fabricated, sensationalized news than the truth.
Well,
I'll tell you what. If you go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Jack, because I got a point on that.
Well, if you go up to Canada, which I went to school in Canada, they do their news completely differently than we do it. They do all the happy stories are their lead. All the good stories about a dog being found after being gone 2 weeks, or someone surviving from something, or somebody who donated a kidney to a stranger. And they save all the stuff about murder, and that's the very end of the show after the sports. That's their format. That's their model. And they do not get people at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock so angry that they don't sit there 40 minutes in, they're pissed off at everything. And that's not what goes on there. And that's why they don't suffer like we do.
Well, here's the point I want to make, Jack, and that's a very good point that you make, but I want to take it another level. The level that I want to take it in is we live in a country of freedom of speech. That means we can say whatever we want. It's opinion, truth, lie, or not. It's irrelevant. We can say it. The problem with having that is we're not evolved enough intellectually, and we're not evolved enough with enough critical thinking to shift through what is true and what is not, and what is opinion that's based on fact that can be spun out, and what's opinion that's based on fact that is really connected to objective truth. Because we as a nation and a society, we don't have enough critical thinking to decipher what's what. We can't have it both ways. If we're going to have freedom of speech, then everything that anybody says, you have to take as suspect of possibly not being true, because you're free to say whatever the fuck you want. You could say anything. So with that kind of freedom, you gotta come to like, all right, you know what, Jack, Corey, y'all can say whatever y'all want, but understand everything you say, because you have freedom of speech, I'm filtering it through my critical thinking and based on my experience, and then I'm also going to fact check on the things that I doubt that you say, and then the next time we talk, I'm going to be like, hey man, what the last thing you talked about, this was right on point, but this other stuff was bullshit. So like, how did you get that? Like, I want to find out what's the objective truth on that. And then that's the kind of dialogue that we need to have. But because most of us aren't evolved with enough critical thinking, you could tell us anything, we'll believe it, and we'll go out and shoot people for it, because it's like, that's, you said it, and you like, you're the dude, so I'm going to believe that. So, the news should have a disclaimer across the bottom that says, warning, none of this shit could be true. So if you shift
the problem,
through.
Stephen, with that is that a lot of people are actually getting their news almost from each other. It's sort of like recycled news. And it's like what they read on Facebook, something on Twitter that seems to gain some sort of knowledge. Like, for instance, I had sent to me a few weeks ago about something about the virus, where there was some fake doctor that was talking about the virus. And then once I did a little bit of more digging, and the doctor wasn't even real, but yet it was something that had just taken off on Facebook and it was sent to me. And you'll see that all the time. And that's where people get their news. So that's the problem. So it's sort of this recycle. I mean, CNN is a problem, Fox is a problem. And then you go to a lower level, you have Twitter, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, and that's another layer of problem.
That is correct. You are correct. But you did your research, you did your homework, and you researched to see if this was even true or not. And if every single American did that with our right to freedom of speech, that's called responsibility. You know, yes. We can have the right to bear arms, but what comes with that is a level of responsibility. So we just don't run around shooting whoever we want anytime we want because we got the right to carry a gun, but we don't have the common sense and the responsibility to learn how to use it properly. And this it's the same thing. Like, you know, you took freedom of speech, you took responsible. Because you gave this asshole, you can say what you want. Okay, you sent me some stuff. He said some bullshit. He told you, you tell me some bullshit. Both of you got the right to say that in America, and I'll give you that. And you did the research on it. If everybody did that, what would happen is people who would put that stuff out would instantly filter themselves because they know 1,000 people, 10,000 people are going to fact check them instantly.
And you know what was a good training ground for me was growing up Catholic and going to a Catholic school. And my parents told me, you know what, just be there for the education. Because I would come home and I would question almost everything that the nuns and the priests were telling me. And it just, so many things didn't make sense. And my parents were like, you know what, seek out your own truth. And that's something that I've taken with me even to this day. So when people say something to me, I'll say, yeah, okay. And then I'll go behind. And it's easier nowadays because we have libraries right at our fingertips with our computers and phones. Where in the past I had to go, and look things up. Because, I mean, look, if I depended on my knowledge of history from what I learned in school, I would know nothing, quite frankly. Because if you,
that's actually a really good point, Corey.
Yeah. That's a very good
really
point.
Good point.
That's a very good point.
Because the stuff they were teaching us in school, Karen and I joked about the fact that we went back to my old school, and we joked about the fact that I had my own chair at the principal's office because I questioned so much about what they were teaching us. And when they were teaching us that the British would march all together in a big block and it made them vulnerable from people hiding behind trees to shoot them, I thought, okay, why would they do that twice when it failed the first time? Like, how could you tell me that was their system when they're walking right down the middle of Park Avenue in a block and all they are is a target? And I was just constantly being sent to the principal's office. When they try to tell us that we bought the Louisiana Purchase for $50 million at a time when America was worth $5 million, I questioned this. And I said, who do we give the money to? We were robbing and raping the Indians like crazy. You don't think we paid for that land, do you? Right to the principal's office. They weren't interested in teaching us or investigating the truth. They were just interested in teaching us what they've been told to teach us.
I get it. And I get it with the curriculum. But one of the things that you have to do in schools is what I call enlighten our young students. Now, I speak from experience from having been a school teacher in Portland, Oregon. And one of the examples that I'll give you was during Black History Month, I was showing the movie Glory. Fantastic movie with Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, Matthew Broderick.
Great movie.
And then we all watched the movie, and a lot of my students, they were a bit upset with how the movie ended. And so one of the things that I had them do was do their research and get the real story of Glory. And they were able to learn about, no, all of the people in the 54th weren't killed. They valiantly held that fort for 12 hours. And then because the other regiment didn't come, didn't have the courage to come, they left Fort Sumner and just, and just abandoned it. And so there was a lot of things that we were able to talk about, even, the first black who was able to get the Congressional Medal of Honor, how he was in the White House. I mean, there were a lot of things that we were able to talk about, and the class felt a lot better. And I think what we have is we have students that don't go out of their way to teach young people, to enlighten them on things. And then you don't have parents that, that don't sit down and talk to their kids as well.
But
so
also,
I get it.
yeah,
Because I get it, because schools only have but so much time. So I don't throw it all on schools because there's a particular curriculum. But you can move off of it a little bit. And now we live in the information age where you can get information quickly. So, I mean, look it up. And so, I've done that with our boy here, Damien. He would have questions, and I would say, you know what, let's look that up together. Even if I already had the answer, I wanted to teach him about looking it up on his own. And I've told him in the past, even with me, sometimes, on your own, look behind me to make sure that everything that I'm saying is true. Because you don't want to just swallow just because I'm an adult. You don't just swallow it. Learn to question things, learn to seek out your own truth.
Yeah, and students can teach the teacher something, especially in this day and age, where they can Wikipedia, they can look up anything in a moment. As you're teaching, they could question before even raising their hand.
Yeah, I mean, we like the kids now are lucky to live in a day and age where they have access to information,
Yes.
to fact check. We didn't have that when I was growing up. I lived with my grandfather who was had just as strong an institution as your Catholic school, Corey. His school was called Hard Knock School of Dumbass. I can't believe you did what Mookie said school. I was dumbass for about 6 years until I got to high school, and then I started wising up on not listening to a bunch of knuckleheads whenever they say stuff, because I get in trouble and be like, nah, why did you do that dumbass? Well, because Mookie said, so let me get this straight. Mookie's dumbass told your dumbass to do it, and he didn't do it, but you did. And now you the dumb. I'm like, and you get enough of those, he started like, wait a minute, I'm really smart, but I'm a dumbass. And then you start to figure it out. But then once you get a taste of researching and discovering information, once the light goes on that informs you, it's contagious. Now you're questioning everything. And I would question a lot of stuff. And then when I got to college, I hooked up with a bunch of brothers. It's like, hey, man, you got to go check out this Black History course, because there's some stuff in there that's completely and totally debunked what you've known for, since kindergarten. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to check it out. So I go in there, and all this stuff I'm learning, I'm like, what? Everything, Christopher Columbus and the slavery and all the, the first, civil rights movement was months out of slavery, and the slaves had acquired over $55 million in a all black bank that was ran by Frederick Douglass, and the amount of wealth that was built in a few years, which was completely and totally robbed. Just stuff like that. The massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There's so many things that you never was told in any history. It was basically the Pilgrims and the Revolution, and some key landmark things, but the backstories and the reality of how we even got to all that was completely and totally whitewashed.
Absolutely. I mean, some of the things that you said really just sent a chill up my spine, because these are some of the things that I've thought about and talked about when you mentioned Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then you mentioned Frederick Douglass. And a lot of people don't know that he was part of the 54, that his son fought in that war and was a decorated soldier, and then eventually got into law enforcement. A lot of people don't know that so many blacks were cowboys out here and out west. I mean, these are things that folks don't know. I'm going to throw something at you guys, something that really struck me and also got me on the kick for researching things and questioning. I'll never forget Encyclopedia Britannica. I want to say it was maybe 1977 version, and it had in there. And I looked up about JFK because my mother was talking about JFK, and she was a big fan of his because she got to touch him and thought, he was just a great president. So I was reading about him and everything, and then it said, JFK was assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald. They put that in there as fact. That was never proven. So Lee Harvey Oswald never went through a trial, but yet that's in there. That was in there in the encyclopedia that he assassinated that. Since when do we convict people before a trial? And I just thought that blew me away, really, when I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, I, I think America right now is going through the University of the United States Constitution, and we are in our senior year, and the final exam is what's happening right now. And we can either somehow figure out how to live up to the ideal of what we're supposed to be, or we flunk the final exam and we lose our Constitution because we've got too many forces from 365 degrees coming in at us, and it's going to be overwhelming and it's going to be too much. You don't lose your republic overnight. You lose it one grain at a time, over time, and you become callous and used to it.
Corey and I disagree about why people are behaving and doing some of the things they're doing. Corey and I disagree. I firmly believe that Americans still follow their leaders, like people they voted for and supported or campaigned for, and they get elected. They stand by those people. And I think personally, people that went through the effort of rooting for and voting for Trump and then being misled by his direction, by his orchestration, the way he conducts himself, I think he lacks dignity. I think he lacks integrity. I think he lacks intelligence. And I think he lacks diplomacy. And these are all really important factors if you're going to be the president of the United States. If you're going to be leading 335 million people, you should look for unity, not division. And he seems to be very much into fragmenting America as we know it. He doesn't seem interested in getting us to calm down and unifying. He's not interested in that at all. But yeah.
Okay, so here's my counterpoint. So let me counterpoint. You had your sale. So because he'll keep running on and repeating the same thing.
Sure.
He knows me so well.
And in this corner.
So my counterpoint to all that is that I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. My thing is, I hold each person accountable for their actions. And who is in the White House means nothing. As someone who has grown up Black, it hasn't mattered whatever there's been a Democrat or a Republican in office. For instance, I had in my senior year, there was a school teacher who was doing a sociology experiment. And he looked at the only other Black male in my class and called him the N-word as a social experiment. So Ronald Reagan was in office. So I don't think that the teacher said what he said because Reagan was in office. Some of the other things and some of the ways that I would get spit on, the way my siblings would get spit on for various things had nothing to do with Jimmy Carter being in office. See, and my thing with you, Jack, and other people, they want to lay the blame at the door of the White House. And I think that removes the responsibility from the individual and their actions. Whoever is in the White House does not make you a racist. You are that way.
Well, let me ask you something. If you're Trump and you don't think that what you're saying is inflammatory and is going to probably cause a reaction that is violent. Why would you be running into a bunker and shutting the lights off like it's Halloween and you don't have candy? He shut the lights off in the White House and
that's
got
a
tucked into a
different point.
bunker
Responding
for
to
his
what
own
I
safety.
just said, that's a different point. You actually just took something and went in a completely different direction. So, in other words, respond to what I just said about responsibility of individuals.
I'm saying that in response to what you just said, as late as the Vietnam War, blacks were being sent to the front line, and while whites were set behind, and blacks were being killed in enormous numbers as a result. And there was, what is it, 58,000 or something died in the course of Vietnam. And a great deal of those numbers are black soldiers that were killed because they were put right in the front and set in the most dangerous situation. Now, that's only 10 years before what you were talking about with Carter and Reagan. That's only 10 years before that.
What is your point?
My point is that I think, first of all, blacks have been treated as disposable by our leaders.
But I'm talking about individual responsibility. So what I was just saying, and I'll say it quickly again, because I don't want to get off on another point. I said it doesn't matter. My point was it doesn't matter who is in the White House. I will not absolve the individual from their responsibility. It doesn't matter. I have seen a number of racial atrocities done to me and my family, and it didn't matter who was in office. So I have seen it. I've seen it run the gamut from Carter to Reagan, Ford, all of them. It didn't matter. So that's why I'm saying that. And I think people want to lay the blame. People want to lay the blame right now. And I think it absolves the individual in terms of what they're doing and what they're saying. And that I won't allow.
The way Trump behaves and the way he speaks and the anger he hang on, hear me out. He perpetuates an anger and an emotion in people that is what got him elected. But it also causes people to say, hey, screw it. President's not wearing a mask. Why should I? The president says to do this. I'm going to do that because I support him. The president has this thing. That's my president. He's not sitting there saying, hey, work together. Let's work it through it like Americans. He's never said that because he is the leader. And people do look at the president of the United States as a blueprint, as an outline.
Yeah, but here's what I'm getting from what you gentlemen are saying. What Corey is saying is there is a fabric of racism that's so embedded in the dirt that individuals, are not doing anything to resist or push back against the subtleties of racism. Instead of trying to eradicate it, they're embracing it, and they're using subconscious and conscious racial things. And if we as a society can take individual responsibility for eradicating racism by not doing subtle racism, by not encouraging people who are compliant on racism, by not encouraging people who are blatant racist or even subtle racism, at the same time make our leaders accountable for what they do, because they have such a high profile and they have such power that they need to set an example as well. But what Corey is saying is, and I can relate, it doesn't matter who's been president since the beginning of the United States of America, because our society is so saturated with subtle racism to where we feel it every day, from blatant people in their trucks yelling the N-word and trying to shoot us like they shot that poor kid in the South. Guys got out of their truck and just point blank hunted him down like an animal and shot him. And then people who are saying, you're pretty articulate for a black dude. Well, that's a black-handed compliment,
Right, that's a backhanded compliment.
It's a black-handed compliment because
it's a black-handed compliment.
because it's like, and then when you say something about it, they're like, oh, I didn't mean to offend you. It's like, well, wait a minute, how could you not know that's blatant in your face? It's not even subtle racism, it's like it's in your face. You know,
deal
Well,
with
I
it.
mean,
it's
there's
Deal
an
with it.
expression now that's being called white silence, and white silence has been kind of tagged to being aware of the racism, being aware of the problem, and saying and doing nothing about it. And white America is being accused of quote unquote white silence.
Well, see, here's my thing on that, and I'll take this to another level. I'm don't care so much about silence. My thing is, if you are going to speak, come from a place of knowledge. In other words, do your research, do and know your history before you speak on things. Not you personally, Jack, but I'm saying just someone in general. That's my thing. So I don't mind. It's like that's fine. Keep quiet. If you're worried about what comes flying out of your mouth, like some of the things that was said to Stephen, and I've had that said to me too. Oh, you speak properly. I have graduated from Rutgers, so I've worn a Rutgers shirt, and I've had people question, you know, how I was able to go to that school.
They didn't ask how you got the shirt.
What's
They didn't
that?
ask how you got the shirt.
No, they just want to know.
How you got the
They just
shirt.
want to know. They'll tell me. They'll ask me, "Wow, do you realize that that's a really good school? How did you get in there?" And I go home and I'm fascinated, and I'll bring it up to my wife and I'll say, and it's happened in front of her, and I'll wear the shirt or something like that, and she'll say, "Wow, I didn't realize." And I said,
Now,
yes.
now let me tell you. Now let me tell you guys something. Now Corey went to Rutgers. Corey graduated. Corey's a really intelligent guy, and he's why I picked him as my partner. I love this guy. I love how he presents himself. I love how he forms his argument, and I love how he kind of keeps me kind of penned in a little bit before I go too outside the lines. If I were a coloring book, I'd look bad. Anyway, now I never finished college, but I've had people talk to me about the show and say, "That's amazing that your partner is able to keep up with you." I mean, he sounds almost as educated. And I have to straighten him out and say he's 10 times as educated as I am.
I mean, see, but there you go.
It's a completely racist comment.
Yeah.
It's a completely racist comment. Because they're assuming.
Yeah. And here's the thing that Stephen and I and other blacks have had to do. See, we put comments like that, sort of, at least, and I won't speak for Stephen, I'll speak for myself. Over the years, I put them in sort of categories. And that would be one of the categories that I would say, okay, you know what? I'm not even going to deal with that. That's their madness. And then I just keep moving.
See, I straighten people out on that.
You get to that point because you just don't want to battle everybody. You don't want to be fighting all the time. It gets exhausting.
I'm tenacious. And I make that correction. I make that correction every single time I've heard that comment. I have made that correction. I will go individually, coast to coast, if I had to, because I think it's important that people understand and appreciate you for who you are, and don't assume that I have more education over you when I don't have 20% the education you do. Okay.
So what you've done is bolstered my point. Okay, so what you've done is bolstered my point. That has nothing to do with who's in office. That comment has nothing to do with who's in office.
Well, I want to make a comment on. I want to make a comment on what Jack said about white silence. You know, my take on it is because black people, and I'm sure that Corey, you are as well as I am, an expert on racism because we've been exposed to it so often. It only takes 10,000 hours to be an expert of anything. Every black American has about 100 million hours of racist experience, so they're experts at it. And what I have learned is there are people who they say one thing and they do another. Let me give you an example. I was born in the Midwest. I went to IU, Indiana University, and people were like, "Oh, you went to a college, you know, it's not Rutgers, but IU is not so schleppy either." And people, they would be talking all this smack, all these racial jokes and these innuendos and all this stuff. But then you would find out like they're silently writing letters to eradicate racism. And these are white people, and you would not know it because it's like you would bet your left testicle that Bobby Lee is racist as a mole because of the stuff he says, subtle, subconscious, whatever. That dude is racist. And then you find out that they're working with city council or they're working with their senators to eradicate or to implement regulation that benefits black people. And then I've discovered the opposite of that. We have white people that are down with the black people. I got black friends. I go to black churches. I work with black people. I play softball with black people. My daughter married a black dude. So I got ample proof that I'm not racist. But then their policies and their subcultures and their societies are all super hyper racist. To the point to where when you catch a dude in the middle of the cornfield with camouflage paint on, shooting cans, waiting for the race war. Like, wait a minute, you was the one who was saying your daughter married a black dude. So what you out here with paint on, like shooting targets, shooting for the race war? It's like, so I have learned because of that is I don't care if you're silent. That doesn't mean shit to me. I don't care if you're out preaching, a white person, Black Lives Matter. That means nothing to me. Black dudes, black people doing this, that means nothing. It's where you are in your attack on systemic racism through the American institutions is where my barometer is on whether you are really racist or not. Because where you put your signature, which no one knows about, only you, can affect whether racism is eradicated, whether it's stalled, or whether it's advanced, a stroke of a pen. And there's a lot of strokes of pens that's happening right now behind the scenes to reinforce racism and to initiate systemic systems to oppress people of color. And they go out and they do their Black Lives Matters in front of the social media cameras. So that's my take. And I don't know if that's the take because I'm a comedian and I've been exposed to a lot more issues. I've been on stage where I've been very controversial and people have given me pushback and some laugh and some heckle. Some want to fight me after the show. And I'm not afraid to be like, let's go outside. Let's knuckle it up. Well, when I was younger, not so much now. I'm like way past that. But when I was young and dumb and had that chip on my shoulder, I tell jokes people, we can go outside. We can finish the joke right now. But
you got nothing to worry about if I come to your show.
But and you know something, and I'm gonna bolster what you just said. So we have Joe Biden and his quote. I now know where he stands and how he feels about blacks. For him,
what is this quote? I've heard about it a couple times today. I don't know what the quote is.
If you vote for Trump, you're not black.
I'll read it to you. Yeah, I'll read it to you exactly. So I won't paraphrase. I'll just read it.
Hopefully you're saving it for our show too.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you have a problem figuring out whatever you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black. How in the hell does he make such a statement and determine who is black and who isn't?
Is that a quote or is that somebody editorializing?
That's a quote. That's a quote. A quote from him. And so I just said to myself what I say all the time and all through the years, thank you for telling me, for letting me see your real face. That's what I look for. Because like Stephen, I don't care in terms of what you say to me. It'll come out later. It always
Wow.
Comes. Yes.
Wow. Because I heard it being alluded to on a couple of radio shows today, but nobody said what it was.
Of course not.
And everybody kept acting like, oh, you must know what it is. And how can he say that about voting in blacks? And I'm like, what did he say?
Right.
That's an actual quote, huh?
Well, I tell you, it's the you get sucked into that mentality that think you are super familiar and can get away with saying things because there's enough black people in your circle that make you feel so comfortable that you think you can say the N-word and it's cool. This is like a variation of that. When you are around I have noticed that when there's white people that are around enough black people and they get comfortable and familiar, then they start to try to take on like some black vernacular. And it's like,
Yes.
wait a minute, what are you doing? It's like, well, I'm just trying to be like, well, you're already that. You don't have to mock us in order to
Right.
be us. And, I think Biden was enough black people to feel familiar that he had the license for some mockery and got caught up into like the wrong thing, because because it's like I have a whole lot of friends that would be like, oh no, Kimbrough's cool, he's cool, you can like use it, and it's like in my head I'm like, I'm cool, but you're the idiot that is totally disrespecting me by mocking me, racially mocking me. Do I want to go in? Sometimes it's a battle I want to go in. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes, like Corey said, you just be like, you know what? It ain't even worth it. It ain't even worth it. There ain't worth time and energy on this dude.
And you know who Biden's front runner is for his running mate? He's getting ready to choose a running mate. You know who his front runner is? A black female named Clyburn. You guys know that? That's his front runner. He knew he wanted a female, and it looks like he's choosing a black female, and her name is Clyburn, Clyburn, and that's going to be his running mate. I don't know how she accepts it. If that's a quote, that's a shocking kick in the knees for that attempt at running for the White House. And I do think something's wrong with Biden. I think Biden's got a little bit of dementia. I do think Biden isn't all there.
Yeah, but you know what? I would take dementia over Trump any day. You give me a semi-racist dementia than a complete total racist who's a complete, I would take, you know what? He got dementia, he's a little bit out. I'm gonna go with that dude because
It's funny.
at least
It's
there's
funny
no
you say
malice.
that, Peter.
Like what Biden said, there was no malice behind it, and that's what a critical thinking person has to look at. Everything Trump says, there is serious malice behind it, and he's talking in code to his people. Biden didn't say that with malice, and he's not talking in code to his people who support racism. He's not talking in code to a group of white supremacists that hear that and go, oh, Biden's one of us. That was something that he said was racist, so now Biden's on our side and we can like use Biden to do our race. It's like, no, I don't believe that in my heart of hearts. I think, between the age and the familiarity and just, trying to be the person that is the guy for the black vote, you don't think it through sometimes. And a whole lot of brothers don't think through what they say, and white people don't think through what they say. So I'm not putting too much weight on crucifying him on that statement because there's more statements to come. What I'm looking at is, as a director and a writer of films, when I write a line, there's the line, but what are you really telling me behind the line? And what does that mean? And where's the point? Because what you say, hey, I love you. I love you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
And if he's smart, he will use it as a teaching moment. And his aides will huddle around him and say, listen, you need to come up with a better message. And it's like, no, it's like, don't try to reach people with, fake street cred. Like, don't say things like that.
right, correct.
Just run on your own platform.
Correct.
And again, I keep saying it, for me, I just hold each person accountable for their actions.
Well, we have to because that's the ideal. We've been inundated